Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us live. This is Talking Turkey, and we're here to answer all of your Thanksgiving dinner related questions. So, my name is Katie Haynes. This is Nancy Ferrace, and we have Karen, Suzanne, Daniel. We make up the culinary team here at Exploration Commons. So, Exploration Commons is CCPL's new makerspace and teaching kitchen where you can come in, take a class, learn something new. We also have meeting rooms for the community to use. We're located in the lower level of the Westminster branch and we'll be opening very soon. We are very excited to have you guys actually here and taking classes. So we have had a lot of questions submitted via email, and we're going to answer all of those. But if you're watching live, then, put your questions in the chat or the comments of whatever platform you're watching, and we should be able to see them here and definitely answer those for you. We are also going to be sharing some of our favorite cookbooks, and Nancy is going to share hers first.
Thanks, Katie. Good evening, everyone. My favorite book for this time of year is The Perfect Turkey. That is one of the questions that we get most often is how do I make that just perfect bird? And one of my favorite recipes in this book is actually how to do the brining. Oops. Thank you so much. So if you happen to check this book out from the library, you'll have your traditional dry brine, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but that's my favorite book on different ways to brine, roast, and prepare and carve your turkey.
Awesome, Nancy. Thank you. So one of the most Googled questions when it comes to making Thanksgiving dinner is, how do I cook a turkey? So I thought that we would get started there. So one question that we had sent in is from Mark, and Mark asked, I always forget to pull the turkey out of the freezer. Is there any way that I can defrost it on Thanksgiving Day? So who's going to answer that one? Yeah?
So, Mark, not all is not lost. Your turkey still can be prepared on Thanksgiving Day. Hopefully, you noticed maybe the night before that you forgot to thaw that bird, but you can submerge that bird in some nice cold water. Karen has a method where she uses a bucket and some ice and submerges it that way. If you have a large brining vessel, you can do that. I've even seen people use a kiddie pool to brine their thaw their turkey. But you want to change that water every 30 minutes. That's the key. If you have a frozen bird that you need that day, you want to keep that water running and change it about every 30 minutes. So all's not lost, and good luck.
Awesome. That's good to know. So what does one do if you're going to do it, with enough time? When do we need to pull the turkey out of the freezer? What do we do about defrosting it? How does that all work if we do start with enough time?
All right. Well, that one is going to depend on how big your turkey is. So the bigger bird you have, it's going to need more time to defrost. So if you're just going to defrost your turkey in the fridge, you want to take it out. So for about a 12-pound turkey, that's going to be about 3 days sitting in your fridge. A smaller bird may take only 2 days, 1 day if it's around a 4-pound bird. And also, I always find it's a good idea. You want your turkey thawed 48 hours before you plan to cook it, because I like to leave 1 day to dry out in the fridge as well. So adding in that extra day to dry out also gives you a little more buffer in case it did not thaw as quickly as you wanted it to.
Great tip.
Awesome. So Sherry asked, tell me about brining. Do I really need to do it? I don't have a big enough pot. So what do you do when you want to brine this big turkey, but you don't have something to brine it in?
Katie, I'll gladly talk about dry brining. So 48 hours before you want to cook that bird, you want to rub it really, really well with a mixture of 2 tablespoons of salt with 1 tablespoon of sugar, and let that sit for about 48 hours covered in your refrigerator. And then you want to pull that bird out and go ahead and put a little melted butter on it, some delicious herbs, and let it come to room temperature for about an hour, and then roast it. And you'll have a wonderful, delicious bird with that nice juicy inside.
So do you leave the dry brine on it?
That is a great question. Yes, you want to be sure you use a bird that has not been pre-injected with anything in the frozen section. So a fresh bird works really well for that because you don't want it too salty. That would happen. But yes, you leave that wonderful brine solution on there that helps the mussels soften and keeps that bird nice and moist.
If you want to do the traditional wet brining, and you don't have a pot big enough, one of the things you can do, I often keep a food grade 5-gallon bucket available just for my turkey. That's like the sole purpose of this bucket. But I'll put it in there with the brine solution and a bunch of ice as well to keep it, you want to keep it out of that danger zone above 42 degrees. But you want the water to be warm enough, it's going to thaw in there. So having some ice in there while it's thawing, well, not thawing, but while it's brining, will give you that brine as well if you're doing something wet. And again, I'm going to go back to that 24 hours. You want to take it out of the brine and let it sit in your fridge again, because you want your skin, especially if you're like me and you like a nice crispy skin on your turkey. You want to let it sit in the fridge so all of that moisture can dry out. And like Nancy said, just make sure you're not using a bird that's already been pre-brined. It'll say on the package if natural juices is one thing, but a lot of times they'll have like a saline solution in there. If they've already added that, they've already injected it with extra salt water, and we don't need to double brine it essentially.
Awesome. Okay. Cheryl asked, is it possible to make gravy from a turkey breast or ahead of time from a purchased stock? That's a really good question because not everybody is going to make a full turkey. You might just make turkey breast. So how do you make a gravy when you don't have the full bird?
So if you are not cooking the full turkey, so just the turkey breast, so that's typically not going to give you enough fat to make stock or to make a gravy. So then you're just going to replace the fat you would have gotten from your turkey with some butter or with a neutral oil that you cook with. And you can go ahead and use a purchased stock, either chicken stock. But also we found a great tip while we were looking at resources for this. And Cooks Illustrated had a recipe where they used chicken stock, but also a little bit of beef stock in there to kind of give it a little bit that richer flavor that you're missing by not having a roasted meat provide you the juices for that gravy.
Thank you. Okay, next question. Amanda asked, my turkey always comes out dry. What do I do? How do I save it when it is too dry? So who wants that one?
So Amanda, if your turkey is coming out dry, be sure that you haven't cooked it too long. At this point, it may be a little too late, but make sure you let that turkey rest for 1 hour minimum when it comes out of the oven. And Katie has some thermometers in front of her, and we can show you simply if you have a very large bird, your 20-pound bird or more, you want to use the big thermometer. Otherwise, a smaller thermometer, take that temperature in the breast, insert the thermometer all the way down, not quite to the bone, and watch the dial. And as it starts to get cooler and then get warmer, then pull it back up and you'll find your coolest spot of your breast and repeat that at the thigh level as well. So again, push it down in, watch the dial, pull it back up about midway, and you'll see if you're about 155, you can go ahead and pull that bird out of the oven. The other thing you can do is some people do roast that bird upside down, and they'll roast it breast down in the roasting pan so that the juices soak into that white meat. So again, you want to make sure that you don't overcook it and that you let it rest well before you carve it, because those juices come out if you take that bird right out of the oven and go to carve it.
Okay. And again, if you're watching live and you have a question, feel free to just pop it in the comments. We had a couple questions about smoking a turkey. And I know, Karen, Suzanne, your family smokes their turkey, so I'm sure you have some tips to offer on that.
So yes, we definitely have switched over to smoked turkeys the last few years. And it's definitely one you need to plan for, because when you're smoking a turkey, you're typically cooking it at a much lower temperature. So you're going to smoke the bird either just on a smoke setting, depending if you have like a pellet grill that you can control the temperature, or if you're using a traditional smoker. But typically when you're smoking a turkey, I actually wrote it down so I wouldn't get it wrong. Oh, there we go. You typically need about 3 to 4 hours to smoke the turkey when we're talking about a smaller 10, 12-pound turkey. But it's about 30 minutes to 45 minutes per pound. So again, it depends on how big your turkey is. But one thing in there you definitely want, Nancy said, is you're going to check the temperature, because again, if you overcook your turkeys, that's when you're going to end up with a drier flavor, and nobody wants that. But you can always put gravy on. That's the other benefit for that. But just play with the different woods that you can use to have different flavors in your turkey. And you don't want to go overkill on your turkeys. So turkeys, they absorb a lot and they're a milder meat, and so you're not going to plan to smoke your turkey for like 8 or 10 hours like you might for a brisket or something else. So it kind of fits really well into Thanksgiving Day, in my opinion.
So talking about turkey size, one question that people always ask is, how much turkey do I need? So how much turkey do we need?
Well, typically it is often said that you want about 1 to 1.5 pounds of turkey per person who is eating. So that usually gives you enough for some leftovers as well. If you find that your family, because there's so many sides at Thanksgiving. We talk so much about this turkey, but like I know at my family, like there's like this much turkey on the plate and there's a whole lot of everything else. So keeping with that about 1 pound guideline works really well. If you're serving a really large meal though, so you have a lot of people coming and you're like, I need like a 22-pound bird. Do not buy a 22-pound bird. They sell them. Farmers really love to sell them, especially if you order a fresh one late. I've learned this. But what you can do instead is just buy 2 of the smaller birds if you do feel like you need more turkey to serve the family, because that's going to allow you, again, to avoid that dry turkey by overcooking it. And also, it's going to get done in the amount of time that you have on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, Karen, and add to that, one other tip is if you have a family that really likes white meat, you can roast 2 breasts, or you can roast your whole turkey and roast another breast along with it. And if you find that turkey's not done, as my friend here has found a couple times, when it's time to eat, you can take that turkey apart and cut the legs, cut the breast, lay it on a sheet pan, put it in the oven, and finish roasting it so that your family does have turkey before the football game starts.
So there's always a way to save your turkey, it sounds like. All is not lost. Okay, so I think, Karen, you're going to share your kind of favorite cookbook.
All right, thank you. So my favorite cookbooks in general come from Cooks Illustrated. My spouse turned me onto them when we first met, and I love the amount of energy they put into all the recipes. They test out multiple versions and everything. So we have this book here, Holiday Entertaining from Cooks Illustrated, which covers all the different recipes you might be looking for your holiday meal. Which I found really funny, though, in this one, is there is a herb roasted turkey recipe. I have been using this recipe since like 2001. So when I don't smoke my turkey, I actually use this method, which is really nice. But I thought it was so funny because this was published in 2017, but clearly they know it's a winner because they continue to publish the same recipe, and because it works. And yeah, that's why I love this book. So Cooks Illustrated, any other cookbooks, I love them all.
Awesome. So we have a question from Nicole, and Nicole said, I want to make awesome stuffing for this Thanksgiving. And no, I am not stuffing it into the bird. Any tips for great stuffing? That's an awesome question. Stuffing is my favorite. Absolutely. So who wants that one?
We probably both have, or all 3 of us have something to add to that one. I grew up in central Pennsylvania. So for me, it is definitely the traditional bread, celery, onion, sage, butter, broth, butter, and then, baked, and then have some of those great turkey juices put over it. But it's definitely a traditional kind of potato bread type of stuffing. Once in a while, I'll get adventurous and make like a pecan stuffing or cornbread stuffing, but you have to make the traditional along with it. And then you have great leftovers too. So Karen, do you want to share your favorite stuffing?
So my favorite one has pecans and sausage in it, and is typically a cornbread stuffing. Sometimes I'll make it with a sourdough bread as well. It depends on actually whatever extra bread I have available some years. But also find that make sure when you're making your stuffing, you want to add enough liquid, but sometimes people tend to forget to add enough fat in there too, so that the bread kind of holds that moisture. And I find, a lot of us are not looking for dry stuffing. But it depends. I don't know. Maybe your family is. But ours are typically looking for something a little more moist when it comes out of the pan. So.
And Nancy, did you say potato bread?
You can use potato bread, yeah.
Oh, I don't think I've ever had that.
Oh, yummy.
I really like cornbread stuffing. And when I was younger, I was a vegetarian. And so my mom replaced the either turkey stock or chicken stock that she used with orange juice. And so, yeah. And so I use orange juice, which sounds very strange, but it adds just like this little lift. And like Karen said, having enough butter or fat, whatever fat you're going to use, I think is really important. So whenever I make it, I just think, oh, wow, this is a lot of butter that's going in here. I forget every year, but it really makes a big difference, I think. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Nicole. And Amanda asked, do you all have any favorite recommendations of recommended side dishes for people with specific dietary restrictions? Okay. I'm actually just going to share my cookbook now because it would be a good time to do that. So this cookbook is called Celebrations. It's by Danielle Walker. She has several cookbooks, but she does a lot of, all of her recipes are grain-free and gluten-free. And Celebrations in particular takes the different holidays and she either redoes the traditional recipes and makes them grain-free or gluten-free, or she kind of comes up with her own twist or a different variation. So I really like this recipe if you are cooking for people with more restricted or limited diets. And in terms of some other restrictions like gluten-free, it's pretty easy now to use an all-purpose gluten-free flour to make your cornbread dressing. I do that. You can replace the butter with different oils or with a preferred butter spread. So it is, it's not too hard to make those substitutions for either yourself or your family that has a limited diet. Anybody else?
You mentioned something that I thought of. We tend to keep the salt down on the turkey if we haven't dry brined or brined it. We'll put carrot, onion, and celery and an orange in the center of that bird when we roast it. And when you said the orange, I'm like, oh, yes, we do that. I forgot we actually do that. When we smoke it, we do the same thing. So you can put some citrus in the center of that bird and gives it a nice little flavor without adding too much more sodium.
I like that. A good way to cut back on sodium. Yeah. Do you have anything? Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. Okay. All right. Next question. Kirsten asked, what can be made ahead of time and how far ahead? And then Jamie had a similar or a question that could kind of go with that. And it was, what can be made and frozen? So who wants that one?
All right. So I like to make sure when I'm planning Thanksgiving meal is I write out all the stuff that we're going to have. And then I also write how long things are going to take, where they need to cook, like on the stove, in the oven, something like that. But you want to be able to, have an idea about what you want to do the day of. So having a plan for things that can go in advance. So a lot of the stuffing and casseroles, those could actually freeze in advance, or you could make them up to 2 days in advance, have them ready to go just to reheat if you're cooking your turkey in the oven. Nancy talked about letting it rest longer than the standard 15-minute suggestion. That's a good time to throw things in there to warm up. I personally always make all of our pies the day before. Like the day before Thanksgiving is pie making day. And then also prepping a lot of the veggies. If I'm planning to cook them fresh the next day, I will have everything cut up and ready. Even like our potatoes, we'll peel and chop all of our potatoes, put them in some water and put them in the fridge, and they'll be ready to go the next day. Cranberry sauce, I know freezes really well. I've actually done that one because typically only one person in my household eats it. So I end up with a lot of leftovers, and I have frozen it many times. And also our pies. A lot of your pies freeze really, really well. So any others?
Sure. Well, anything that you can do ahead of time. I like to make my yeast breads the night before, proof the dough, shape the dough, get those rolls ready. And then if it's cool enough outside, I wrap them in some wrap and leave them outside so that they're cool but not freezing. Had that happen. And then in the morning, after your turkey comes out of the oven, you slip those rolls in. And voila, you have beautiful hot rolls right ready for dinner. You can also pre-bake them and rewarm them. It's just what your plan is, like Karen suggested, with having a plan and a grid for the day eases everyone's minds and make things a little bit easier to go. Also, when things come out of the oven, make sure that you cover them or off the stovetop and you have them in your serving dish, warm your serving dish if you can. Even run some warm water in it will help take the chill off, especially a stoneware that you're going to put some potatoes in or your mashed potatoes. That'll help keep it warm just a little bit longer too.
Nancy, you had a really good tip that you shared with us earlier about keeping food warm in a cooler. So she's going to describe how she does this.
So coolers are basically thermal, so they keep things cool, but they also keep things hot. So you can actually take your casserole dish, cover it with foil, set it down in a cooler, and then take some taller glasses, taller than your dish, put a piece of cardboard on it or cardstock, heavy board that you have, and then you can put your next level of food and just keep layering them like that and close the lid on the cooler. You can put a warm brick in there. You can put a warming pad, anything like that. And that cooler will actually keep that food warm for several hours.
I did not know that. Did you know that? I think, did you? That's an awesome tip. Yeah, that's so good. Okay, we have a question from Jen. Any recommendations for creamy mashed potatoes? Who's going to take this one?
Sure. All right. So I find to get really good mashed potatoes, a good idea is to start with the right potato to begin with. So if you're cooking what is a traditional baking potato, that's a very starchy and wet potato if you cook it kind of the traditional way of chopping up your potatoes and boiling them. So that one I find is a very watery mashed potato. If you want to boil your boil the potatoes to cook them, pick something like a yellow potato, a Yukon Gold that has a naturally creamy texture to begin with. And that does a much better job of being able to integrate your milk and your butter in there, or your oat milk, or even you can actually just use some of the cooking water if you're making it completely dairy free with another fat that you want to use. But that will give you a nice creamy mashed potato. There's other ways to make fluffy mashed potatoes. I'm not going to go to that. I just realized I was going down a tangent. We could talk about a lot. I like potatoes in many different ways, but my favorite really is the Yukon Gold. That yellow potato is going to give you that nice creamy flavor versus, don't grab your russets. If you're going to grab your russets, you actually need to steam them, and that's a whole nother process. And most people stick with boiling.
A couple other tips for really creamy, once you mash those potatoes in the pan that you cook them in, make sure you have a little bit of that cooking water in there. That helps heat it up. Add your warm milk or cream to it. Add your white pepper and salt and butter or whatever other flavorings you want to add. You can add a dollop of sour cream. That makes it super yummy, but you don't want to mix those. You want to just mash it and then stir it in and leave them alone, because that's when you make glue, and no one likes gluey mashed potatoes.
Okay, thanks for those questions. Okay, Kathy asked, my son and his girlfriend are vegan. What can I make for them? And I think there are a lot of things that you can do. I know earlier we talked about using your favorite butter substitute, or just using a different type of fat, or like you said, using just the cooking water to make your mashed potatoes. So there are all kinds of things that you can pretty easily do. If you're looking to make a main dish, one thing that I like is like a stuffed acorn squash. So you can stuff it with cooked wild rice, dried cranberries, walnuts. You can do cooked lentils. It's really yummy and pretty simple to make, and it would give a nice main dish. But you could also, roast some vegetables, or one of my favorites is doing sweet potatoes, roasting them in the oven, taking them out of their skin, mashing them, and then using coconut oil, salt, and cinnamon. And it's just delicious. So simple, but really, really tasty. Did you guys have any thoughts for vegan? Okay, fabulous. All right. And let's see. Beth asked, my pumpkin pie always has a big crack. Why?
It's always so disappointing when a pie or cheesecake cracks. There's a few tips. You want to make sure your temperature in your oven is consistent so that you have good baking temperature. But the biggest tip I can give you is take that pie or cheesecake out of the oven when it's still about an inch wide circle that jiggles when you shake the pan. So you do the clean knife test. You might be a little bit too far at that point. So do that clean knife test about halfway out from the center of your pie. And if it's clean, take it out. It'll continue cooking while it sets. Now, if it does crack, all is not lost. It's still a delicious pie. Go ahead, chill it, serve it, put some crumbled pralines on top, put some little bit of whipped cream on top, decorate it up, serve the slices, and no one will know the difference anyway. They'll still enjoy it.
Yeah, it's still going to taste good. So what I'm hearing is don't overcook things. Don't overcook your turkey. Don't overcook your pies, and you'll be good to go. Yeah. Okay. So to kind of wrap up, if you all have any further questions, go ahead, put them in the comments or chat. And we've just got one more thing to share. So I thought it would be nice if we could each share like one final tip or one thing that we've learned through all the years of Thanksgiving. So I'm going to pass it to Karen.
So my favorite tip for Thanksgiving is I know a lot of people like myself get really excited about new recipes and you really want to showcase these, all your family's coming. You're like, I'm going to make this awesome new recipe at Thanksgiving. This is generally not the best time to try a brand new recipe. And if it's something very different, like maybe you've tried it before, but it's very different from what you typically serve, and you have a lot of family members who have certain expectations about what they're going to eat for Thanksgiving, if you're trying something new, have some of the old standby dishes still available. I'll never forget the year I made, a sweet potato, mashed potato combination because I was working on, increasing the nutrient density of every dish on my table. You thought I had canceled the whole holiday with how offended people were that there was just not plain mashed potatoes available to eat. They're like, what is this? No one wanted my sweet potato dish. So the other time too, one time I made a pumpkin cheesecake for Thanksgiving. I'd never tried this recipe before. It never set. We waited, I think, about 2.5 hours after our meal. It was still in the oven. I was like, oh, just a little bit longer, just a little longer. And it was still soup at the end of it. And I at the time was so devastated. I've learned to let it go. When you're cooking too, that's my other tip is stuff goes wrong. It's okay. Just don't worry about it. But at the time I was so devastated. This fancy thing I thought I was making didn't work out. So don't try something new, or if you do, pair it with old favorites too. Nancy?
Thanks. Those are great tips. Good stories. I'm sure we all have them. For me, it's all about remembering why we're celebrating Thanksgiving, getting together, having a quick meal that we spent, 6.5 days preparing and eating in 20 minutes, and then watching some football and playing games. Our family plays traditional games, which is kind of fun. We have a game night afterwards, and then we have a dessert and have a good time. So that's kind of my recommendation, is just enjoy the day. If you try something new and it doesn't work, just chalk it up and try it again. And if something works great, hey, take applause for it and say thank you to everybody that you had a great time. So that's kind of my tip.
So I also had a pumpkin cheesecake disaster. All of the butter leaked out of my crust, and it was smoking in the oven. I was at my mother-in-law's house and the smoke alarm started going off. It was midnight that I was making this cake, and this cheesecake, and my son was 2, and I was like, oh, he's going to wake up. That's the worst. Anyway, I would say if this is your first Thanksgiving, let other people bring food. Let other people bring dishes. You don't have to do it all yourself. And even if it's not your first Thanksgiving, have other people bring stuff so that you get to relax and enjoy too. So I think that's all we got. Oh, wait, there's one more question. Another one. Jen, what's the best way to carve a turkey? What knife should you use? Oh, this is a great question. Here we go. We've got tools here, so we can show you.
So we did anticipate this question. First and foremost, do not have a National Lampoon moment where you bring the turkey in on a platter with all of your family around your best china and your best dishes in this glorious moment, and you poke the fork into it, and it's either bone dry or it's still raw. So you want to take that turkey out to the kitchen and just carve it out there and put it on a platter. To do that, you're going to need a knife. So a nice chef's knife is always good. Make sure it's sharp. This is a steel. Many of you have knife blocks. You don't know what this is for, so look that up on the internet. We can show you. Just run your knife blade down that 3 or 4 times on each side. If you have a serrated knife, you can also use that. That works really, really well on the breast meat, so you get those nice clean slices. You get them kind of thinner. And use a fork. People don't want your hands all over that turkey for carving it in front of everybody. You use it to hold it. You can use it when you're breaking the pieces apart. But start with that breast. You want to go down the breast by the bone, and then you want to come in like the leg side, and then you want to make your slices, and it'll make perfect, beautiful slices. You can lay real pretty on a platter, and then take off those legs, lay them on there, and the wingtips if you want, and you've got a beautiful bird to bring out on a platter instead of and the mess is in the kitchen, not on your beautiful tablecloth.
Awesome. Thank you. I feel like my husband always does the carving. So now I want Nancy to show me how. Yes. Okay. So I think that does it for us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us and asking your questions. We hope that you have just an awesome Thanksgiving and that you enjoy your time with your family and friends. And we also hope that you come and see us when Exploration Commons opens. So thanks, everybody. Yep. Good night. Thanks so much.